Thank you for being here. The People's Progressive Party, as you are aware, will hold its 32nd Congress starting tomorrow at the Convention Center at Lelandal. It has been reported that there would be over 3,000 delegates and observers attending our Congress. In addition to those delegates and observers, we'd have a large number of people who support us from abroad, who will be part of the deliberations of the Congress. And there are several ministers who are not members of the People's Progressive Party. They are part of our civic component, who will be accredited to be observers and participate in the entire Congress. So the registration starts tomorrow, and the main sessions will be on Saturday and Sunday. We have delegates traveling from all 10 regions to be here, and in significant numbers. It's the largest Congress ever held by the People's Progressive Party. The last Congress had just over 1,000 delegates, and now we have almost over 3,000 delegates and observers. So the logistics to accommodate, feed, accommodate, and transport those party delegates and observers will be challenging, and I'm extremely grateful to the large number of volunteers that we've had who have already started working in preparation for the Congress and who will work throughout the period when the Congress is held. These are right now over 500 volunteers, and I expect this number to grow in the upcoming, in the next few days. The opening ceremony will be broadcast live, and the media will be invited to that, the opening ceremony. At the Congress itself, we'll have the presentation of the Central Committee report, and that will be done by the General Secretary of the party. And the report will basically outline the history of the party in a very brief way, the core values that bring us together as a party, a bit of our history and struggles throughout different periods in the life of our country, but we'll focus a lot on what took place since the last Congress, which was held when we were in opposition. And it will trace our fortunes throughout that period, and the situation, the environment in which we had to operate. And many of you are familiar with that. The struggle to ensure that democracy prevailed was a primary task in that period, and to fight off the excesses, the economic excesses, the squandermania and the corruption of the APNU AFC and in that period. So we will deal extensively with that in the report. And then, of course, the challenge of government and fulfilling our manifesto promises and how well we have fared in this regard. And also some of the ideas for the future growth and development of the party, the things that we have to work on if we want to see the party grow. Now, the theme of the Congress you see behind me here would be strengthen the party, defend Guyana, unite our people for progress and prosperity. We believe that each of these are important tasks. First of all, to strengthen the party, and defending our country is an important issue in the face of external aggression and threat, and then bringing our people together, uniting all the people of Guyana for progress and prosperity. There shall be 7 workshops where all 3,000 odd delegates and observers would have an opportunity to freely express their views and have those views documented, so the views can then infuse the future programs of the party with those ideas that come out of the Congress. And those workshops relate to the strengthening of the party, number 1, politics and parliament, 2, social and economic policy, 3, 4 would be local government, 5, social media, a very important development in the world now, 6, the international situation, and 7, youth and gender. These are the 7 workshops that would be held at the Congress, and we are looking forward to an active participation from all of our members in a free, open manner, so that we can grow the party, reaffirm its position on these matters, and as I said before, come up with new ideas as to how we can grow the party. At the end, there shall be a political declaration that will reflect what came out of the workshop. There are several resolutions coming from different party groups that will be put before the Congress on various issues: the Palestinian issue, the border issue, and there, for example, and there are other resolutions coming from party groups, which is their right to do so, that these, in terms of amendment to the Constitution of their party. So these will also be debated at the Congress and either be approved by members of the Congress or not approved, or not be approved by them. There are 93 persons contesting the post of the, so let me go, first of all, tell you about the elections at the Congress. So at our Congress, we do not elect the General Secretary or the other secretaries of the party. There are 2 elections. First, all the delegates can vote for the 35 members of the Central Committee of the party. So they elect from those contesting, and in this case, 93 persons, they'd have to elect 35 members of the Central Committee of the party. Then they also have an opportunity to elect 5 candidate members who will be able to attend the Central Committee meetings but will not have the right to vote. those, when they elect those, the Central Committee will meet, and then they will elect the General Secretary of the party and other secretaries. This has been in our Constitution and the practice from the very beginning. It's nothing new. I see some people who are not very familiar with our Constitution or what took place at every Congress prior to this one. They have had some flights of fantasy as to what has been happening or what will happen at this Congress. So it will be very competitive because you have to elect 5 persons from 63 contesting, and then another 35 from 93 contesting for the full Central Committee. So in a nutshell, this is what's going to happen at the Congress. I want to thank all of the people who have been working diligently to have all the documents ready for Congress, and also to put in place the enormous logistic. This is like 3,000 odd people, and you would have probably close to 4,000 people maybe at that venue. It's like a small rally, and to be able to feed and house all of these people for several days is a big challenge, but we're getting tremendous assistance from all of the supporters of the party, and I want to thank them publicly for this. Last week, I spoke extensively about the race issue in Guyana. And I said to you that unlike the past, when we believed that as a party, that maybe the work and progress and the even-handedness of the government policy making would have somehow caused people to see this and help to abate the situation as it relates to race relations. That unlike that period when in this era, we intend to confront the issue frontally, because we failed from Chedi Jagan all the way to recently. We failed to broaden the base of this party, largely because of the rumor mill and the lies that the PNC told to many communities. In fact, it was the whisper campaign that did enormous damage to the PPP, falsely portraying that we are racist and we're only concerned about the development of one group of Guyanese. Although the policy making and the government's progress belied that position, we didn't make this sort of crossover that we're experiencing recently. And we have taken a deliberate strategy. In opposition, we pointed this out. And now in government, we intend to tackle the issue frontally. So that means confronting the groups that are really racist in this country. And we have now pointed out that the PNC thrives on this racism, and that's the only tool that it has to mobilize people, because it has no track record of progress or achievements, and it has a track record of stealing elections. So last week, consistent with that promise that we made, that we're going to really tackle this issue frontally, I pointed out that somehow people may believe that because APNU is against Indo-Guyanese and Amerindians and people of mixed origin, they may believe that they're for Afro-Guyanese. But I pointed out that they're not really working in the favor of Afro-Guyanese because they want to keep them in a particular state so as to justify this argument that they're dispossessed and discriminated against, and therefore they must remain in the camp of the PNC. And I demonstrated how this is being done. I demonstrated clearly how this is being done by their public utterances and their own lack of attention to the growth and welfare of Guyanese and Afro-Guyanese in particular in the periods when they've been in office. And they had nearly 30, well, over 30-something years of the nearly 40 years when they've been in control of the executive and the parliament of the 50-odd years we've been independent. They've been in power. And they never address this issue because they want to keep people in that manner. So clearly this touched a nerve in their quarters. And I pointed out also that the call for the boycott of the business in New York was consistent with that issue, to keep people in their camp. And how do they do it? By vilifying people, shaming them, calling them names, slaves, crossover, sellout, etc. And then the ultimate tool was boycott their business. So this week, we have seen the same people emerge again. And I'm going to go back at it, take another shot at this one more time. So Rick Ferdberg, the same man who called for the boycott of the business in New York, he posted my picture along with a woman from Agricolor, not Agricolor, from Maka, in the mud, and said, if you were silent when the PPP was destroying and boycotting African Guyanese businesses, organization, event, remain quiet, etc. Now, basically implying that we were discriminating against Afro-Guyanese in Maka. It's not a new accusation. So let's talk a bit about, first of all, what happened in Maka. Now, I had not dealt with this issue throughout, but since it came up again, and these are basically the last straws that they're hanging on to, the dying pieces of driftwood that they're clinging to, that I think it necessitates a response. Because here, locally, it has very little resonance, but they keep perpetrating this abroad, that somehow we discriminated against people in Maka. Now, you know we're building a highway going out on the East Bank. The highway, we kept that land available for the highway for 15 years. We kept the alignment cleared because we knew there had to be a highway there at some point in time. Today, that highway is built. Built now, within 4 years of us being in government, that has changed the lives of people on the East Bank. It has opened up more lands. to many people. New businesses are going there. Thousands of new jobs are being created. When we allocated land in the past, people who had land all the way to the back of those cane fields, they were in the backlands. It took them maybe 10 to 15 minutes from the old public road to get to their properties. Those properties had a lower value than properties in the front part of the scheme. I recall when those were all cane lands, when there was not a single house there, no housing scheme on the East Bank, when we started building those homes. And many people were reluctant to even occupy the land that was so deep, almost all the way to the Conservancy. Today, with that highway, all of those people, if you drive down it, I want to urge anyone who has not driven on the highway from South Georgetown all the way to Diamond to do so. And you will see what has happened, the quality of the houses now. Suddenly, all of the people who are living at the back of those cane fields deep in have seen the value of their properties skyrocketed. It's changed the whole life of people. Now have easy access into the city. Maka is no different. Maka village was deep in the backlands. Now they're frontlands now because of that highway that we've built in less than 4 years. Changed the lives of people on the East Bank or anyone using that. So that's the first thing. They ignore totally. People were squatting on the alignment. So we had to remove them. They didn't have title, so they were squatting there. They didn't have titles or leases to the land. So we found 35 structures along the alignment. To date, 28 of those persons, of the 35, now got a plot of land elsewhere for free. Not just the land was given to them free, but we also did all the processing of the title for the land freely. We paid to those 28 persons who had structures along the alignment compensation of $250 million and 5.1 million in crops that they had. That is how we treated the people who were on the public land that was part of the alignment for a major highway that was going to transform the whole of East Bank. We didn't throw them off, left them on their own, etc. We worked with them, like we are working with people now who are on the alignment of the bridge. When the bridge comes over, lands a new $261 million bridge that will change the lives of the people in Region 3 and also people, business people, and everyone else from 4. We're working with people who are now in that alignment. Many of them have titles, and we are now working to compensate them because of the nature of this government. There are 8 persons who did not accept that, and they filed court cases, and it's their right to do so. This person that they posted with the picture next to me, Rickford Burke, is a PNC councillor in Maka, I'm told, and and they made an offer of $14 million compensation and a plot of land, a commercial plot of land, to her. She didn't accept it. I heard she called back a month ago, or the mother, not the daughter. This is the daughter. The land, the property is in the mother's name, but the mother called again. to find out whether the offer is still on the table. The offer will be there, but they have the right to go to court too. So this is how we have treated people there. Now, I go back to how APNUMA treated squatters. This was from News Sword, Gordon Mosley, 2017. Confronted by weeping residents and human barricades, the Central Housing and Planning Authority has temporarily aborted a demolition exercise in Sophia that targeted squatted houses and structures erected on government reserve. They didn't need it for a road, but they were just breaking down people's homes. This was just a reserve. They didn't have to build a road there like the highway we're building. And they were just breaking down these houses. Whole big team there. Look at this imagery here. And it says in the Stabroek News, mother standing on their bridge. So this is what Rick Fredberg posted there. And it says, Agatha Valentine's daughter and grandchildren stand guard over their bridge, part of which they dismantled to save their home from being torn down. This is all under APNU period, just recently, not the earlier period when Desmond Hoyt had sent in dogs in Sophia when they started squatting there. This was their track record with so-called Afro-Guyanese. Here, contrast the two. We work with those people who we needed the land to build a highway that has changed the land value to everyone who live in Maka now, because they now live in frontlands. We work with people, we compensated them when we needed the land to move them. Didn't go and throw them off. I have lots of imageries. I can go back and show you all about APNU's approach to squatting, because they come back to my earlier point. They love Afro-Guyanese only when they need their votes, not when they're in power. Now they love people again by complaining, posting an image of me with a woman who is sitting down there in Maka. How come Lowenfield, they didn't give land to they couldn't find land to people in Linden to give, ordinary people. We're providing 1,400 house lots, but they gave Lowenfield 216 acres of land in Millie's hideout. The same Lowenfield, the chief elections officer next to Maka, got 2 acres of land in 2018, I think it was. 2 acres of land. They didn't, one concern, ask how many people, other people in Maka got the land. The same Maka that they're complaining about, a large tract of land was dismantled. So this again reinforces my view. It's what I spoke of last week, that it is the only racist party in this country is the PNC, and they use Afro-Guyanese interests only to mobilize people. They have no concern whatsoever for Afro-Guyanese. So, as I said before, I think it touched a nerve. And so we had Vincent Alexander then came in, and 2 letters came out in the last week again. So not just Rickford Burke. The first is that the $500 million that we gave to IPADG. Now IPADG, you recall the Demerara Waves article in the APNU era, where the Afro-Guyanese organizations wanted it dismantled, that it was not representing Afro-Guyanese interests, and secondly spoke about potential corruption at IPADG because Vincent Alexander and Corbyn both sit on the Elections Commission, but they were renting at a substantial sum an office from Corbyn to house iPadagy. So they asked, how could this, where was the ad, etc. Well, I'm not going to go back through that history. It's a long, sordid history. So we're not going to go there now. But you know the whole history of it, that they have taken $500 million of taxpayers' money given to them, and instead of using it to promote the interests of Afro-Ghanese consistent with the decade people of African descent, the UN objective, they practically used it on themselves. So shamelessly, Vincent Alexander now comes out and he says, giving the 500 million was a pittance that we gave to iPadagy for advocacy, which they spent on seminars and wages and salaries for themselves and rentals of building, and gave practically nothing to anyone else, just a few of them. He compares that, he says it's a pittance to the $9 billion that we give to Amerindians and the $7 billion to agriculture and manufacturing in our budget, because agriculture and manufacturing are mainly Indo-Guyanese activities, which is a lie, basically, which is a lie. But we can, let's say for a moment, he's right about that. Now he's comparing what we're spending on agriculture for the people of this country, thousands of farmers, and manufacturing for the thousands of enterprises we have and their workers, to the $500 million that his organization got to spend on themselves. And he said the $9 billion to the Amerindians who live in 242 villages for their development, he's comparing, said, I got a pittance. He wants the $9 billion to go to his organization so he could spend it on as they see fit. This is the typical racist kind of rhetoric that we see, because you're not comparing apples with apples here. There's $500 million was never given to an advocacy organization, I don't think ever in the history of our country. And they got it. This is for the ministries to deliver goods and services to our people, what he's comparing it with. But you notice he never spoke about the $5 billion we spend annually to subsidize electricity for Linden and Kwakwani. Which other group in this country, people who live in Georgetown, or the Amerindians, or Indo-Guyanese, or mixed people, or anyone else, they don't get that $5 billion per year. He didn't mention that at all. It is this, every day they wallow in this racist kind of rhetoric. And it's worn now, it's worn, and people are seeing through it. So this is what he said. And then he went further. The second letter, that was one, I think. And I would have sued the Stabroek News, but I think it's their mistake. They put a new law for the vice president. So that's the title. And it says, I write to note that Guyana has descended to a new law in its gutter politics. Imagine Vice President Jagdeo berating Afro-Guyanese leaders for not encouraging Afro-Guyanese to make use of the opportunities that are presently available when his government closed down the night schools in Sophia and Kildonan. So I didn't even know that there were night schools there. But now I'm responsible for closing down some night schools in Sophia and Kildonan. So I called to find out from the ministry, and they said, we never ran night schools in Sophia and Kildonan. Those are private endeavors, not government endeavors. So we didn't close down any school that were in there run by the government. So that's the first lie he told, that we closed down the schools. So these were private initiatives that were there. So then I said, well, I know we launched a new program called GROW. And we have the GOAL program. So we promised 20,000 scholarships. So he's complaining about 2 schools, about opportunities. I'm denying Afro-Guyanese opportunities in 2 private schools, apparently night schools, that may have trained from 20 or 30 people. And he ignores all that we have done since we got into office. So what have we done? We promised 20,000 scholarships. Today, 27,000 Guyanese, almost more than half maybe Afro-Guyanese, are now on GOAL scholarships studying for university degrees and technical issues. Ignore that completely. Under APNU and Vincent Alexander, from what I gather, had a consultancy from the Ministry of Education. He was there. Ask them how many scholarships they gave to Guyana, much less Afro-Guyanese. We know who got these scholarships. Simona Brooms and her children, or Simona Brooms' children, it was the Annette Ferguson, so almost all the ministers and their families. So you ask them how many they give to ordinary Afro-Guyanese. So he ignores that 13,000 or so, maybe more than 13,000, are now studying at the tertiary level, paid for by this government. That didn't happen under this so-called government that looked out for Afro-Guyanese. And so, from what I gather, these night schools were, the 2 night schools were privately arranged, and they were doing remedial classes. So what about remedial education now? So when we discovered that people could not go on the GOAL scholarship program because they did not have the required qualifications, we launched a new program called GROW. And GROW was to get them to do something akin to the CXC, a remedial program that would allow them to qualify now to move up to tertiary education. Under the GROW program, we have had over 5,800, maybe close to 5,900 persons under GROW who have qualified, and about 3,000 of those are Afro-Guyanese, and 366 are from Sophia. The same Sophia that he talked about, we closed a night school there that would have trained maybe 15 persons or 20 persons. 366 are from Sophia, from that GROW program, and half of them have gone on to now tertiary education. This is the reality. But he writes a letter, we have descended in the gutter. We were in the gutter. We are trying to up under APNU, under Vincent Alexander and the others. We were in the gutter. Now we are trying to lift people out of the gutter, and that's what they don't want, because then they can't argue that this government discriminates against you. So you have now, maybe through the GROW program and the GOAL program and the BIT program and the WIN program through the Ministry of Health, over maybe 20,000 Afro-Guyanese of the 50,000 people maybe who are being trained or so, maybe close to that. I don't have the exact number when you aggregate it, but it's definitely over 40,000. More than 20,000 Afro-Guyanese who didn't have any scholarship or training program in 2020, now under this government were trained. But they will ignore all of this, and then they snipe. Oh, Jagdeo closed down 2 schools. that were not part of government schools in any case. I didn't even know they existed. I didn't even know they existed. And now we are still open to supporting these private schools if they do good work in the community. And so I told them, let's have a second look at these schools if we can still help them. But this is the sort of... So consistent with, again, last week, what I said, they came out, Village Voice now, the PNC organ, said, oh, we're not racist. Look who said that the PPP is racist. So they quoted an international authority to show that it is the PPP who is racist, Desmond Hoyt. So they put Village Voice, promotion, paid for the Committee to End Discrimination and Abuse in Ghana. Desmond Hoyt said we are racist. It's like getting Kwame McCoy to say the PPP is the best party in the entire world and in multiple universe, around an alternate universe and everywhere else, the best thing. It's like getting Kwame McCoy to say that. Kwame McCoy is a member of our party, the Central Committee of our party. So they're quoting, this is like the circular incestuousness to prove their own point, that the PPP is racist now. It's a pattern. And if anyone operated under the illusion that these are outliers, this is not part of their core belief and philosophy, look at today's press conference with Norton, and where he endorsed boycott of Afro-Guyanese business as a legitimate way of keeping people away from the PPP if they dare to support the People's Progressive Party. No more, you don't need to work. So this is how APNU operates. We steal elections and we bully people to support us. We steal elections, and when we can't do that, we bully people to stay in our camp. You have to stay in our camp at all costs. We can abuse you, we can deny your children a scholarship, education, we can deny you land, etc. But if you look a particular way, you have a duty to support us all your lives. This is their way of operating. So he endorsed throughout, I looked at all of that, he endorsed this whole idea that you can boycott people if they don't support you. They'll only allow the PPP to go into their business, or they're civil with the PPP. It's not going to work. Nobody pays attention to APNU anymore. They know they don't have a future, and their racist policies don't have a future in this country, and we'll fight it off. Nobody cares about Norton and his boycott, etc. They're looking to be part of a progressive country. And one thing people know about us, if you come to us, we push you to do things, to accumulate, to educate yourselves, to be positive about the country, not to feel you're victims all the time. That's what the PPP stands for. So I'm not going to even go through what they said at the press conference. It's just all about endorsing the racism and embracing the extremism of Rickford Burke and the bench cops, etc. Norton has formally done that. He has nothing else to do. But it's a big panic in their camp. A big panic in their camp. For a long time, they've not been called out in this manner. And why you think this whole week, it was all a set of activities to prove once again we're racist. So it didn't end there. The GTU president also questions government swiftness to respond to sugar workers' one-day strike action. So again, sugar workers are Indians, therefore PPP responded quickly, but didn't respond to the teachers. Two totally different issues. So these workers went on strike for pay that they're entitled to in the collective bargaining agreement that they've had for 40 years now. Under APNU, in the past, the old government, the PNC government, PPP government, and under APNU, etc. Nothing has changed here. So they were striking for their pay that they should have received in lieu of leave, which is if they qualify in the crop, they attend 80% of the time. At the end of the crop, they're supposed to get I think it's about 1 week of pay in lieu of leave that they would not have. That was their entitlement throughout. He equates this with the union asking now for us to go back and adjust salaries from 2017 that they didn't have in APNU period. They couldn't get from APNU from 2017. It's not 2019. From 2017 to 2023. He equates it with that. So swift to make a racist kind of comparison. The issues are totally different. And then says, also at the May Day activity, workers must get the fair share of oil wealth. In 2020, the total sum of money dedicated to wages and salaries in the budget was $126.8 billion. In this year's budget is $210.7 billion. That is how it has grown in the 4 years. And this is only for public sector workers. Massive growth in the emoluments for public sector workers. Today, I dealt a lot with this issue here because I wanted people to really understand the true nature of the PNC and their desperation now. They're very, very desperate. I saw they issued a statement from Region 1, everything under the sun is wrong. But if we're so bad and they're so great, people would recognize it and show up to their meetings. Nobody turned up to their meetings that they had there. People didn't show up to their meetings because the people in Region 1 remember what happened under APNU. The vilification of Amerindian communities, calling them greedy, taking away their workers, $700 million from those villages. In Region 1, putting in place the GRA to collect billions of dollars of taxes when we had effectively made that goods coming into those regions would operate because of the high cost of living in a tax-free manner. All of those things people remember. It's not so far back. So you can issue 100 press statements about Region 1. It's not gonna change how people view you in those areas. And the ultimate test is in those in people showing up at your meetings. Now, I saw something all week. Starbuck had 4 editorials on corruption and PAC, but they focus mainly on 2 contracts. The Tipuri contract and the Bamia contract. So almost all 4 editorials dealt with those 2 contracts about corruption. So they've ignored all what happened on the APNU. They've ignored the fact that we have resumed lawful tendering now, or acting in accordance with our Procurement Act, where things are publicly tendered, and all these contracts were publicly tendered when people were handpicked to get contracts on the APNU, which was just recent. They ignored all of that, but that's fine. People have a right to do so. But isn't it a bit unfair too. They fall into, and I notice they quote liberally from the opposition. Isn't it a bit unfair? You have, on those pump stations, you've had about 19 of them are being built now under construction. You've had companies there that this government has had to cancel the bid, the contract run by Indo-Guyanese. We've had to cancel a contract in Berbice for over 800 million. The guy didn't comply. Now that person had track record, built pump stations before. But the two contracts that are they're focused heavily on, and let me say something here. Now I support these contracts, but I didn't, so they tried to make everyone Jagdeo's friend. On both of these contracts, I don't go to the cabinet. I didn't even know when they were awarded. So, but I support them. I support them because these are Afro-Guyanese too, who are trying to get into this. These are the same people who argue that Afro-Guyanese don't get any work. And when they get work, the focus is entirely on them. How many other contractors don't finish their work on time in this country? How many other contractors don't finish their work on time? Of people of every race. But the obsession in a very difficult environment is with the people from hits and jams, because somehow they're perceived to be close to the PPP. They're not card-bearing members of the PPP. But these are the same people who are going to say that Afro-Guyanese don't get a break. When they tender and they got a contract now, the entire focus on them, it might be because of corruption. As though people close to the PPP too, even if they are, should not get any work. This is what I noticed already, and it's part of a clear plan. So we made it clear. Let me make it clear. We will defend the interests of all the people of this country. We defended Indo-Guyanese interests and the sugar workers when they were under assault, because we felt that APNO was going after them in a political manner. It was persecuting the Indo-Guyanese because they wanted them to migrate. It was part of a political strategy. We defended Amerindians. We defended people in Region 10. We defend all of our people, regardless of their race. And on corruption, there will be corruption. This party has built in several mechanisms to fight corruption, including one of the most robust laws that we have. People have recourse to review the PPC. They have recourse to the court. The thousands of contracts we do now, most of them are done on time and they serve the benefit of the people of the country. If you have corruption, we should expose this. But this is totally unfair when you focus only on a couple of people, almost as part of a plan. This is part of the same philosophy of boycott. And also, if you dare get a contract, never mind we say you're not getting contract because you're Afro-Guyanese, but if you get a contract, we will make sure you don't succeed, so you stay in our camp. And this is part of the plan. Now, there's one thing I want to say too, because I find, this week or last week, we had a number of people who were removed from the seawall. And they had a good point. Their point was that we were told we got permission to vent here, and we were told that we can't vent on fixed structures because ultimately the seawall has to be developed into a boardwalk for everyone, the whole seawall. but you can continue vending, which is something we have always supported people with, that they can vend in a manner that doesn't disrupt other people or their businesses, that they keep the place clean, and the structures are mobile, and that they don't stop at like critical junction on a highway, which can be dangerous. But we recognize the right of people to earn a living. So we have allowed vending, but provided these facilities are mobile, so when you need to upgrade the place, they can be easily removed. A number of people have defied that and built fixed structures. So they claim, why didn't ministry tell us this whilst we were building the structure? And I think they have a point. Ministry of Public Works has been delinquent. I've spoken to them a million times. Delinquent when this happens. Sometimes we said already, people erect all of these signs. A man just goes and put up a big sign by the side of the highway, and they have no permission whatsoever. They block the highway, they change the aesthetics of the place. Then they would see the sign going up, the ministry, and then for weeks later, then they will start going to say, you don't have permission, take it down. So we get into confrontation with people. We said to them a million times, the president has said this to them, ensure that you police the highways so that people don't do this. And so not at the end of the period, you're going to go on claim, and then we have confrontation. Look at the main highway, the 4-lane highway, the Heroes Highway. We said we're not going to allow people to build from their houses access onto the highway, so you have remaining a public highway. Unlike the other highways, historically we can't change that. But this one here is a new one, and we can keep it as a highway. I came down last night from the show at the stadium. I see people already building out access onto the highway. And Public Works will not take action until it's done. So they need to take action. But people also have to understand that they can't do this. Some people go and cut down the trees. You know, they don't even get consequences for it. Trees that are flowering trees that you built there, we're planting trees to beautify the place. They go to contractors, they just cut off the trees just like that without any consequences. People have to change too. But Public Works needs to ensure that this happens. When people advertise these shows, look at it, the dirty cardboards are left there days after. They don't go and remove it. They put these little dirty signs on all the lantern posts everywhere, and then they don't go and remove them back. If you take tough action and charge people for defacing the property, then it's another issue. If we want to change our country, people also have to do this sort of thing. And there's something else that I wanted, which is unrelated, maybe a little extraneous. A number of people, when I went to Sapphire and other places, they keep asking for spectacles for their children. And I want them to know that in this year's budget, we have budgeted for every school child in the public sector or the private sector, wherever the child is going to, wherever they're going to school, in whether public school or private school, that they can get a voucher for $3,000 to test their eyes, and then $15,000 to buy a spectacle, to help to buy a spectacle. Not going to be a fancy spectacle, but you can get a spectacle. So once they need the glasses. And those who are already tested and need specs, they can also get the $15,000 to get maybe a second pair or have their eyes retested. So that should, Frank Anthony told me that they should be ready to give out the vouchers in a few weeks' time. So please, when we go out, people keep asking all the time. I've had like 3 or 4 persons approach me in Sapphire to say the child needs a spectacle. That's for every one of our kids in the country, 200,000 of them we have budgeted for. We have also budgeted for pensioners to also get the same facility. Pensioners can get the $3,000 to test their eyes, and there's 74,000 of them, and also they get the $15,000 to buy the spectacles. That's part of this year's budget. And in addition to that, please be reminded that the voucher to test for cervical cancer, HPV tests, etc., will be available. It's an $8,000 voucher, and for every woman in this country above the age of 21 years, because they can go in and collect the voucher to get tested. We've set aside over $1 billion to start building the facility, because no doubt once we start testing, we will find more people with maybe in the early stages of the cancer sector, the facility to do radiotherapy and all of that. So in this year, we are building in the public sector that capacity. Please be reminded of this, because often when we go out, a lot of people don't even know what's in the budget. I see the mayor, Roysdale Ford, and talking about what that we must pay the city council. He basically ignored all that I said last week. The city council has gone on. This group, the spending, how much they owe, the differences between the last mayor and this mayor as to how much is owed, all of that. So rather than focusing on the neglect of Georgetown, they're encouraging that neglect. The PNC is encouraging it. You recall some time back, the Kaichor News asked me whether I own any shares in the Kaichor and Kanji blocks. That was about 3 press conferences ago, and I said, I know you want a headline which would say Jagdeo denies ownership of shares in the Kaichor and Kanji block. That's what they are looking for. So I think they let some time pass before the headline ultimately appear here. So VP Jagdeo denies being beneficial owner of Kaichor and Kanji oil blocks. It appeared. Predictably, it appeared. So as I said before, I had nothing to do with this. They know that, but they asked me a question to get the headlines. So these are just some of the issues I wanted to deal with. The Exxon Mobil and the GRA matter. We are fully supportive of GRA's efforts to address this matter and address it in the courts. I've seen that at a press conference, the head of Exxon in Guyana saying that they have not been served as yet. I asked the Commissioner General, why is this so? Since they told me since last week it was filed, and he said that the court did not have the bailiff and that they expect it to be served today, the summonses, to go to court. The effort of GRA to clarify this issue did not meet with helpful responses from Exxon. They were told that it would not, whatever the price, that's what they said to me, whatever the invoice is, the price on the invoice, since it's tax-free, it will not result in the loss of taxes, but that was not the issue. We've made it clear that if invoices are deliberately increased, it will have an impact on 2 things. It will overstate the cost bank, And two, it will change the tax liabilities of the government, because as you know, in accordance with the PSA that Trotman signed, the responsibility for paying taxes rests with the government of Guyana on behalf of ExxonMobil. And so we are treating this matter seriously. As a result of this, it's unbelievable that anyone could even think about submitting an invoice for $12 billion. That's like 2 FPSOs here. I don't know how come they came up with that. They said it's exchange rate. I don't know what exchange rate they could have used, etc. So we'll get the explanations in court. We're looking forward to get the explanations in court. And we are now ensuring that we also, before we finalize any of the audit, this audit, the second audit, that the GRA will go back and check all the back invoices for the past several years to see that there's been no overstatement of any of these invoices. It's a serious matter, and we're taking it seriously. If they have explanations, because they can give it to the courts, because now we have filed charges against them, and so they will respond to that. Those are some of the issues I wanted to deal with. Thank you.
Mr. Jagdeo, then Shabrol, sir, could you say at this stage what is the government's position with respect to a $180 million request by GPL for emergency priority funding for transmission and distribution upgrades?
I didn't.
I'm asking what is government's position with respect to a request by GPL for a US $180 million assistance from the government to upgrade the transmission and distribution network as a matter of priority. That's my first question.
So we made it clear we will fund these activities. I explained at great length about the several components, the 5 components of the project. And I'm not going to repeat those. But part of the distribution component that is from the power plant, we've already awarded a contract to evacuate the power from the power plant to the control center, which would be built at Eccles, to bring the power across, and also to take some of the power to Vredenhoop. So there are several substations and the transmission main as part of that component. And the contract has been awarded to an Indian company, Kalipataru, I think that's the name, and that component should be completed along with the pipeline component of the project by the end of the year. So that will bring power to the control center, which is being built now, a separate component of the project. We argued, we also said there are 2 other components of this project outside of those 5 that are crucial. One is to build a transmission main to take power to Linden, and with a substation to allow distribution of some of the power along the highway to electrify the communities along the highway. So that component, we are already drafted the request for proposal, and it's out. And then there is about another component running between 180 maybe to 250 million that would lead to critical upgrades in the distribution and the transmission system to ensure that the power, once we have more power, that we can take this power to Berbice, to everywhere else. The whole, like Georgetown, and that the transmission, the poor transmission system and the weak distribution system, replacing transformers, etc., wouldn't affect us. So then we will have power, more power, but still have blackouts because of the weak transmission system. So that is also a component that they are working on, and we will fund that too. We'll have to fund it.
When will that 180 to 250?
That has to start almost immediately. Immediately. So they have presented this proposal to us, and I think we'll get back. But we've indicated we'll have the funding ready. Even if it has to come from the budget, it has to be done.
Do you foresee, well, not this current budget as it stands, but do you foresee a return to the Assembly for supplementary funding?
There could be that, or we could get it financed from a loan. Okay? But even if it's financed from a loan, that's just the funding. Can you ask Steve to, 1 minute, just ask Steve to get me, to come a minute. Yes. So, I was making a point about funding, right? That even if we have it funded from a loan, you still have to get the expenditure cleared in Parliament. So we do have to go back for supplementary, because the difference between financing and supplementary. Can you get me that document where they spoke at May Day about the judge's ruling? Just get it. I think I left it on my desk.
And you foresee this coming into place before the middle of the year? Well, next month being June. Do you foresee all of this money?
It has to be done. It has to be done before the middle of the year. We have to get this done in time for the distribution of the power.
And who you may be turning to for the loan?
No, there are several sources now. We can probably go private now. As I said to you before, we're finding now that the private sources of funding are cheaper than the multilateral sources. And I pointed this out, that two loans, the Islamic Development Bank loan is like 5.9% for the Linden Highway. The interest is 5.9%. In the private sector, we may be able to borrow below 5%.
Quickly, two other questions.
Sure.
Is government willing to go back to the negotiating table with the union now that the court has ruled? And another question, are you aware of a potential terrorist threat on next month's cricket tournament to the Caribbean and the United States?
About what terrorist threat?
A potential terrorist threat by ISIS in the Caribbean, and what is government's response as part of reaching?
No, I'm not aware of it. I'm not aware of it. But I'm not saying there isn't a threat. I'm not aware of it. Okay. I'm not aware of it. I have not gone to the last Defense Board meeting, and I don't know if the matter was discussed there or not. Okay. At the Defense Board. I missed that meeting.
Okay, so in addition to the union question about return to the bargaining table, could you say at this stage what amendments are being proposed to the PPP's constitution?
Okay, I do not want to speak about the amendments there because these are proposals from groups. However, those will be presented to the Congress. I have no doubt that as soon as people get their package tomorrow, you may see those amendments. It will be in there. Every delegate and observer will receive a bag with all the documents. So you will, knowing you, you may get this by tomorrow. But it has not gone to the members of the delegates as yet, so I don't want to speak of it here today. Yes, I said last week we are prepared to return to the bargaining table, but we made a proposal to them, that the union, that we are prepared to discuss a multi-year agreement, which is what they requested, starting from 2024.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jack.
Now, may I just say that, since you mentioned this, that the Marawaves did a story, made their story. And it's quite interesting how the PNC, APNU, they have processed the court decision. So this is what the quotation from the Marawaves. The court has paved the way for you to enter the streets. The court has paved the way for you to shut down this country, and justifiably so. Right? So this is what Darren Wade believes the court has done. That the court has paved the way for you to enter the streets, and the court has paved the way for you to shut down the country. This is how Roysdale Ford sees it. Mr. Ford said that the issue is now an ongoing battle that will go to the Caribbean Court of Justice, and he has already recommended that the trade union movement go on the streets. I told the president of the teachers union, I told the GTU people, take your people on the streets, take your people on the streets. I will be presumptuous enough to say that the leader of the opposition is supporting, and he has indicated publicly he's supporting. So he believes that, imagine this is a politician, a man who is running for the leadership of the PNC, saying that he and the leader of the opposition, Norton, told the union that they must go on the street. And they would be the first one to say that the PPP is falsely accusing them of politically directing a union, and it's a purely industrial matter. This is what Roysdale Ford has admitted publicly, that he and Norton have told the president and the leadership of the trade union, the teachers union, go on the street. This is a major thing. This is, anyhow, I can go on because the court ruling, I hope that the judge is listening to this. The judge is listening to this. And I see a lot of people writing about what I said about I believe that it's presumptuous of a judge to tell the president what he should do or shouldn't do. I stand by that position. The president is the head of the executive branch of government. He is appointed by the people of this country. No judge can tell the president with whom he should meet or with whom he shouldn't meet. And I stand by that clearly. That is why I said it's presumptuous. So yes.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo, and as Williams Criterion News. I'm sorry to see that your lawyer is moving to levy on the assets of Mr. Su. We've made an application to have this done. Can you say how far you guys are in this process? And secondly, have you seen Mr. Su since any of this has been done?
No, I've not seen him. And the thing is that it's wrong. You have it wrong there again. We're not moving to levy on the assets. We're waiting on the court. We have applied for default judgment. So we are waiting on the court to give the judgment. If somebody doesn't file a case, like Kedaki Amsterdam didn't file a case recently in another matter, and we're waiting on a default judgment from the court. Only after that, if there's refusal to abide by the judgment, you move to levying. So that's that's the sequence.
Secondly, recently the head of the Wales Development Agency, Mr. Asghar Ali, he was on a television interview in Jamaica, and he made a comment saying that the current reserves of Guyana is currently at 15 billion barrels to date. However, yourself as well as the head of Exxon for Guyana, you're saying that the recent discoveries aren't of any significant number to boast about. Care to comment on this?
So I don't know what metric Asghar Ali used, but I saw somewhere that he was saying since the declaration of the 11 billion barrels, there have been several new discoveries. So you can have new discoveries, but you have not as yet quantified the size of the reserve. That's the point we're trying to make. And then even when you declare 11 billion barrels, you actually start producing, or you do additional wells, the 11 billion barrels from the old area can either increase or decrease based on more proving of the reserve. Remember, you don't go down there and measure. It's a best guess. It's an estimate based on the size of the rocks. Well, what you estimate the length of the rocks, the oil-bearing rocks, etc., and the quantity that they hold. So this is, Asghar qualified that, from what I think, by saying it was 11 billion and there have been several new discoveries. But I don't know how he came up with 4 billion additional barrels of reserve as a result of those discoveries, because those have not been quantified and submitted as yet to the Ministry of Natural Resources. So that's how I see it.
Okay, moving over a little to the sports section. Sir, can you say over the last 3 years, can you say how much the government has spent when it comes to hosting the CPL finals in Guyana?
Hosting what?
CPL finals.
I told you already, we have not spent any money. The last check, you asked me that question already. Not from Kaichor News. Yeah, but when I say you got to take responsibility for the newspapers too, all right? All of the things, the changing of headlines and stuff. Anyhow, I'm not going there today. But that question was asked, and the last time, was it you who asked the man behind you? You asked me about the thing? I think it was you, yes, probably. You hiding behind you. And I gave the answer that I got from the ministry. The ministry said not a cent. And that position still holds.
All right, one final thing for clarity. Going back to the Mr. Su issue, you mentioned that the government is awaiting...
Not the government, man.
Sorry, you're awaiting the default judgment by the court.
Default judgment,
yeah.
yes.
Is it a case, because I'm trying to understand exactly what's going on, so is it a case that that there's some difficulty locating Mr. Su to have him served?
No, the court, it's... How could you not understand this? It's before the court now. You have to, like lawyer, judges take time to give decisions. So we have filed, we want a default judgment. If the summons was filed, they didn't put up a response, so we've asked the court for default judgment. My lawyers, they told me they've asked for default judgment. We have to wait the court. So it's simple. It's not like it's a complicated matter. Okay. Anyone else?
Sure news again. This, very short press conference, Kaichan.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Last week you said that the government can't do anything to prevent foreign companies operating in Guyana mine sector from flipping their shares. But going forward, do you plan to include any clauses in future mining agreements that would require government approval before they transfer their shares or transfer the company?
But the thing is that So I wasn't going to come back to this. So I didn't look at it too much, but you know you had it wrong, right? The headline was wrong again, that it was not the Guyana operations that were bought for 600 odd million, that it's a merger of two companies and all their assets held in Guyana and other countries that led to that. It's like the same thing with Hess, saying that Hess Guyana shares were bought for $53 million, $53 billion, when Hess is a company which has other assets too. So you're wrong on that issue. I don't see how you can, if these are companies, how you can stop people from merging in another country. How do you stop them from merging? Where in the world is this done? So it's, I can't imagine if you do that. Then this is a normal thing. If people are familiar with this, you would know that mergers and acquisitions take place every day. It's a normal course of business. Two companies in Canada, they feel that if they can come together, they can work better, they can raise more money, they can combine their balance sheets, present a stronger company, then they do that routinely. That is how they raise money for projects in countries like ours or anywhere else in the world. You want us to do something that doesn't make, I don't even know if it makes sense. And that's why I'm struggling to find out what precisely you want. Now, in some areas, we have, like, when there's a direct transfer of shares, we can block that. Like in the oil and gas sector, they have to tell us some of those issues when it concerns the operation here. But you can't do that for everything in the world. Anything else?
On the alleged overstating of the costs on the invoice for Exxon, do you fear or are you concerned that Exxon could be doing this with contracts that Guyana don't have a say in, although we are owners of resources? Because I remember one time you said we don't have co-management or something like that. So could they be overstating costs with the contracts that they hand out to build the FPSO and so forth? Do you fear that now this has come to light that it could be a possibility?
So the thing is, that is why your auditors have to ensure that there's a benchmarking. There's a benchmarking software. So I asked the GRA, and they said they use benchmarking software. The audits have to look at comparable costs. So if the people buy a screw for $10, and then they check the benchmarking software, and the benchmarking software says a screw of that nature can only cost $3, then they can query that in the audit. That's the purpose of the audit. So when they query it, they send it to Exxon now. Exxon has to explain how this screw was procured at this cost when the benchmark price, the cost everywhere else is $3. And then if we're not satisfied, $7 of it from the screw has to go back to the cost bank, profit bank, or remove from the cost bank. And if there is a dispute between that, then you go to the mechanism provided for by the PSA, which is what we are triggering in the case of the forest audit. All right.
Just finally, on that same note, like, for example, if the company is doing business, if Exxon does business with a company, for example, we have here that Exxon handed out a $1 billion contract to a French firm for subsea works in the 6th Oil Project. And it's a company that has been fined several times in the US and the UK for bribing government officials. Are you not concerned with Exxon operating in our block here and taking our resources, doing business with companies such as these?
Yeah, well, the thing is that as I said before, there is no co-management. Why didn't you ask, did you ask the head of Exxon? He had a meeting last week. Why?
Didn't went to the.
Oh, you didn't go
Exxon.
to the press conference? You should press them on that point. You should press them on the point. This is a company that does international work and the price is benchmarked to the average price, then that's fine. But if they, as a result of any incestuous link between, say, ExxonMobil and a firm from abroad, if that incestuous link would cause prices to go up and be unfairly added to our cost bank, it's a big cause for concern for us. And that's why the auditors have to guard against that. Technically, they have to guard against this. Part of what we have done to ensure that Guyanese have more opportunities is that we insisted that they go more to tender for the activities as part of the local content law, and that they break up a lot of the bundled contracts together, which were for the bigger firms. They unbundle them and go out in smaller packages so local people can benefit. As a result of that, a lot of the local people have benefited. From food supply, they had a French company doing food supply. Now, this is local companies doing the food, a locally accredited company supplying food. A number of those other services were provided by foreign companies. Now, because it's unbundled and packaged in a manner, local companies can do this. And that is why we've had more spending here in Guyana. But it is a cause of concern, and you should raise it too. You should raise it with them. I don't want to be, because every time we respond, and it looks as though we're defending Exxon, we're making sure that we get our fair share of the deal. Now, the deal was struck in a manner that we are not happy with, but we're living with it. But we want to make sure that that deal was struck, at least we're getting a fair share of that deal, and a bit more. Yes, go on. You want to?
Just one more thing, Dr. Jagdeo. Coming back to the matter of Sue.
Yeah.
Sir, are you aware that he attended a PPP fundraiser at Fresh Going Diamond last Saturday evening, where he was transported by the Speaker of the House, Mr. Nancy Madir, and he would have also sat at a table that Mr. Manzrinier, also the
really?
Minister Vikram Bharat, and Mr. Clement Rohi was present?
No, I'm not aware of that. You should ask Mansoor Nadir then, that question. How would I know that? Ask Vikram Bharat and Mansoor Nadir what they were doing with him. You ask them that.
No, I'm just
Why
trying to
you
get it
asking me?
out.
So I was not aware. Glenn was there too? At the PPP fundraiser?
No, I was.
Okay, you were? Okay.
Yes, I was.
All right. Okay, well then
Because
that's
I'm
good.
just- I'm
So
not-
it was an open event.
I got tickets. It was a fundraising event for your
Okay,
party.
Well, thank you for attending and buying a ticket. I hope you
You're
buy and you
welcome.
didn't pop it.
You're
right?
welcome.
You bought the ticket?
Yes, so you can't say pooped your event.
And you're not worried that you wouldn't get a cash grant like the other man who's
No, the crash grant isn't my issue.
Right. Anyhow, ask Vikram Bharat, call him and say, what were you doing there with the guy, and Mansoor Nadir, etc., and Clement Roy. You ask them, but I wasn't aware. Yes. So, yes. Anyone else?